Welcome, fellow travelers of the forgotten roads and wanderers of wilds, to the Verdant Enclave. I'm your host and sometimes friendly DM. More relevant to today's discussion, I'm also your fellow wanderer and wilderness guide to the Ranger class of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Let's talk battle damage. Before we get started, I'd like to take this opportunity to cover some details in this new format for analyzing the battle performances of the different characters. I've had to change the formula for baseline comparison, and I'd like to outline some of the house rules we use during play, and finally address some previous word choices made in earlier videos and how I will attempt to continue in this video and subsequent battle analysis. The formula Chris at Triadmonk's Temple uses variables which, while including the possibilities of the game, unfortunately degrade the overall accuracy of the formula, as it adds in possibility without regard for the fact that the chance doesn't factor into averages. Advantage, disadvantage, and critical hits are outliers of battle data, not constants, whereas making attacks and hits are constants. Further, his method calculates for the round. While this isn't necessarily a problem, it isn't working well with the manner I've been tracking damage for the Land of the Hunter. Consequently, I've modified Chris's approach, first by removing those variable components of the formula, thereby reducing it to the more basic form of chance to hit and average of damage dice plus the appropriate modifiers. I chose a base armor class of 15 to determine the basic chance to hit, and then ran the numbers as average per hit rather than per round. There are 3 house rules we use that do have a small impact on the outcomes of battle analysis. First up is massive damage. If an enemy creature is reduced to 1 hit point by a single attack, I have that creature roll a Constitution saving throw. If they fail, then I rule it as massive damage and the creature dies instantly. This can result in an opponent being removed earlier than they would otherwise, thereby reducing the chances of gathering further data. Second is glancing blow. When an attack misses by 1 point below the targeted AC, I allow the attack to hit regardless, but I reward resistance against that particular attack's damage to the targeted creature. This can inflate the actual number of hits the characters earn, as well as the amount of damage they accrue, as I record the damage as rolled rather than accounting for resistance or vulnerability. However, it does mean that the characters have to keep fighting those who survive, so they still have to earn their victory. Finally, critical hits. Per the player's handbook, a natural 20 on attack doubles all the damage dice for that attack. Rather than simply doubling the relevant dice, I allow critical hits to maximize the damage of the doubled dice, and we roll the regular dice as normal. This can result in very high numbers, if characters manage to score several critical hits, and even more so for the rogue, who gets all of the sneak attack damage maximized plus the normal sneak attack damage dice. I have used the words damage rolled several times, but it was brought to my attention that this could be misleading, especially in regard to area of effect abilities. If I otherwise say something like damage dealt or shattered dealt this much damage, the number rolled on the dice is not the same as the damage dealt in such cases. For example, if I as the ranger use Hail of Thorns, I roll the damage once and apply that to all affected creatures. If I use the terminology of dealt, then I should be accounting for the damage dealt to all the affected creatures. This, however, can be something that might end up being visually unverifiable, as I do not always have the recording screen aligned properly. For the sake of clarity and transparency then, I have been and will continue attempting to record only the damage rolled, as that is visually verifiable in the chat window. Keep in mind that this could potentially undersell the value of AoE abilities and spells, since I won't be reporting how much total is dealt. I could try to report on the number of creatures affected, as well as whether they succeeded or failed on any relevant saving throws, but it will be a major alteration to the style of reporting previously done. If you want me to start tracking those details as well, please let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I will continue as I have been. There have been two primary questions I am examining in this adventure, but I chose to add an extension to one of them, as it is a statement I have heard before in relation to rangers. The original two questions are, does the ranger need Hunter's Mark in order to do comparable damage, and are fighters better as archers than rangers? The extended question is, do rangers need their spells in order to keep up with martial class damage output? To clarify, comparable should be understood as equivalent. In other words, in order for the statement to be true, rangers would have to use Hunter's Mark in order to do the same damage as a fighter or a paladin or a rogue or any of the other martial classes. If Hunter's Mark is not needed in order to accomplish comparability, then the statement would not be true. Let's get started with Thea the Rogue, Thief subclass, level 12. From the subclass features, Thea used Fast Hands 7 times successfully out of 7 times. Second Story Work was used 8 times, and Supreme Sneak was used 10 separate times. General abilities are those abilities which anyone can have, for example feats, of which Thea has Sharpshooter. For level 12, Sharpshooter was used successfully 7 times for an additional 70 points of damage, which was 6.24% of this level's total overall rolled damage. As a side note, as I was going through and gathering the data for this video, I realized that I had accidentally added Sharpshooter damage to the average per hit calculations, which resulted in a massive misrepresentation of the rogue's performance since level 4. More specifically, this is average per hit calculations for weapon only damage, which was meant to exclude features and feats such as Sharpshooter. That has been corrected in the preparation for this video and will be something I watch for in future calculations. Over the course of level 12, Thea made 46 attacks, 39 of which hit, for an 84.78% hit ratio. Class abilities refers specifically to the core rogue class abilities, such as Cunning Action, the rogue ability to hide, disengage, and dash with a bonus action instead of an action. Thea used her bonus action to hide 11 times, 10 of which were successful, for 91% success rate. Disengage and dash were used as a bonus action each 4 times, and Uncanny Dodge was used 3 times, reducing damage taken by a total of 33 points. Evasion was used 4 times total, 3 times to reduce damage taken by half, and once successfully to take no damage. Reliable Talent was used 12 times to effectively succeed rather than risk failure. As mentioned previously, Sharpshooter contributed 70 points of damage, while Thea delivered 338 with just her weapon alone. To that, Sneak Attack added an additional 714 points of damage, bringing Thea's level 12 overall damage rolled to 1,122 points. Dividing her weapon damage over 39 hits, Thea had an average of 8.67 per hit, which is 1.83 below the baseline for level 12. With all applicable damage, which includes Sharpshooter and Sneak Attack, Thea's average per hit becomes 28.77, which is 18.27 above the baseline. Let's move now to Adran, Fighter Class, Eldritch Knight Subclass, level 12. For general abilities, it should be noted that Adran has the Warcaster feat, which is used primarily to allow him to continue casting spells without having to drop either his weapon or his shield, and infrequently to gain advantage on saving throws against losing concentration to damage. Given this format is a new approach, I unfortunately did not count the individual uses of Warcaster for this or the next levels. For subclass features, I did include the use of a spell scroll, since if Adran were not capable of casting spells, which is a subclass feature, he would not have been able to use the scroll in the first place. Eldritch Strike, Dancing Lights, Minor Illusion, Melf's Acid Arrow, and Gust of Wind were all used 0 times over level 12. Message was used once, and Firebolt was used 7 times, adding 25 points of damage, 3% of Adran's total damage rolled for this level. Expeditious Retreat was used once to dash as a bonus action twice, and Magic Missile was used 5 times. The first use was blocked by a wall of force. The second use was at 2nd level, contributing a total of 49 points of damage rolled, 7% for this level. Shield was used 3 times, Longstrider and Darkness each once, and Scorching Ray was used twice, for a total of 38 points of damage rolled, 5% for this level. The Scroll of Lightning Bolt was used to add another 34 points of damage rolled, another 5% for the level overall. Over the course of level 12, Adran made 69 attacks, 52 of which were hits, for a 75.36% hit ratio. Bear in mind that though set up to be a ranged combatant mechanically similar to, or competitive with, the Ranger Varen, Adran's player has elected to focus on melee combat, feeling that he could provide more tactically and strategically speaking. Magic damage was already covered in detail, but a summary is provided here. For his class features, Adran utilized Second Wind 3 times, regaining a total of 50 hit points over level 12. Action Surge was used 4 times, all to attack, creating 66 points of damage rolled, or 9% of the level's total rolled damage. Indomitable was used 3 times, and turned 1 fail into a successful save. With his weapons, Adran made 537 points of damage rolled over the course of level 12. 66 points came from Action Surge, 25 from Firebolt, 49 from Magic Missile, 38 from Scorching Ray, and finally 34 from Lightning Bolt, for a total of 749 points of damage rolled. None of Adran's spells are damage riders, meaning that none of them rely on his weapons to hit a target, and therefore are not used in calculating his average per hit. Further, it should be noted that for several rounds of the first combat of level 12, Adran was trapped in a wall of force with a transformed Varen, reducing his willingness to engage in open hostility and thereby impacting his overall performance for this level. For weapon attacks alone, without using any other features or abilities, Adran obtained a 10.33 average per hit, which is 0.17 below the baseline, which is better than the rogue's weapon-only average per hit performance. With Action Surge added in, Adran managed 11.6 average damage per hit, which becomes a marginal 1.1 above the baseline, significantly lower than the rogue. Now for Varen, Ranger class, Hunter subclass, level 12. This level marks Varen's first feat selection of the game, Sharpshooter, listed as a general ability since everyone has access to it. Varen used Sharpshooter 2 times, adding 20 points of damage, just 2% of level damage rolled. For subclass specific features, Varen used Colossus Slayer 35 times, adding 183 points of damage rolled, 17% of his level overall damage. Steel Will was used a total of 6 times, 3 successfully, for a success rate of 50%. Volley was used only 3 times, scoring Varen another 21 attacks and another 21 hits, adding 159 points, or 14%, of total damage rolled for this level. Varen made a total of 116 attacks, for a total of 87 hits, including Volley, for a 75% hit ratio. Magic is a core feature of the Ranger, so Varen's magic usage is detailed here. Hunter's Mark was used 3 times, for 55 points of damage rolled, just 5% of his damage rolled for the level. Longstrider was used 3 times, the third use at 2nd level into Thea's Ring of Spell Storing. Jump and Locate Animals or Plants were both used 0 times. Spike Growth was used once, for a total of 119 points of damage rolled, 11% for this level. Non-detection was used 3 times, and plant growth was used once. For his class features, Varen used Favored Enemy 4 times, and Natural Explorer a distinctive 13 times. Bear in mind that some aspects of Natural Explorer are passive abilities, and therefore much harder to keep an accurate count of. Primeval Awareness was used once, Land Stride 12 times, and Hide in Plain Sight was used once. Varen used his weapons to make 565 points of damage. Sharpshooter added 20 points to that, while 183 came from Colossus Slayer, 159 from Volley, and 55 from Hunter's Mark, all of which rely on Varen's attacks to hit targets, which will play into his average per hit for the level. Further, keep in mind that Varen not only was trapped in Wall of Force with Adran, but also was forcibly transformed into a werewolf, causing him to focus, for at least one fight and one night, solely on melee combat, reducing his performance overall for this level. 119 points came from spike growth for a total of 1,101 points of damage rolled for level 12. On weapon use only, Varen's average damage per hit is 565 divided by 66 hits, when Volley, which is a feature, is not in the picture, bringing his average to 8.56, which is 2.64 below the baseline and well underperforming the rogue and the fighter. Keeping in mind, as mentioned, the forced transformation and being trapped in a wall of force, both of which are highly unusual, though possible, components of gameplay. With relevant damage riders added in, however, it becomes 982 divided by 87, for an average of 11.29 per hit, 0.79 above the baseline. This does not include spike growth, since that spell is not reliant on weapon hits. Here is the average per hit for each character, levels 1 through 12, removing all magic, general abilities, such as Sharpshooter, and class features. The blue line is the baseline the characters are being compared to in addition to each other. The gray line represents the fighter, the yellow line represents the rogue, and the orange line represents the ranger. Now, however, with all relevant abilities, magic, and features added in, we see a slightly different picture. First to note is that the ranger and fighter from level 9 through 12 have been almost exactly lined up with each other, while prior to the 9th level there was some division between them, even though they roughly followed the same pattern, dipping and rising almost concurrently. Note that while the ranger focused on ability score increases at both 4th and 8th levels, the fighter chose feats primarily and did not maximize his primary combat ability score until about 8th level, and further at 4th level switched from focusing on ranged to melee combat. The rogue has an interesting pattern in that it does not move concurrently with the other two, and though mostly consistently rising, can experience severe dips such as 6th level, reflecting the randomness of sneak attack rolls. Here now we see each character's level total damage rolled, levels 1 through 12, without any magic, features, or abilities, so this is weapons only. This is relevant especially to the question of the necessity of Hunter's Mark for the Ranger, who is represented by the blue column. Thus far, on weapons only, the Rogue, represented by the gray column, has surpassed the Ranger only once, at 3rd level. The Fighter, represented by the orange column, has also surpassed the Ranger only once, at 11th level, when the Fighter gains their extra attack. Other than those two instances, the Ranger has held the lead with weapons only. Now let's take a look at what happens when everything is added in. Again, the blue column represents the Ranger's total damage rolled for each level. 1st through 12th. This is with all features, abilities, and magic added in. Now the rogue, again represented by the gray column, passes the ranger 3 times out of 12 levels, while the fighter, represented by the orange column, does not exceed the ranger's totals once. At each point that the rogue surpassed the ranger, situations created ideal circumstances for the rogue. For example, at 7th level, when the trio of elves attacked a camp of sleeping hobgoblins, or the rogue was isolated, such as at 12th level, when the rogue was the only combatant in play until Wall of Force was taken down and Baron and Adran could join the fight. Does this devalue the rogue or decrease its value? No, but it helps put the data represented here into context. I hope that you're finding this analysis as interesting as I am, and that you will continue to explore the Ranger class with me, as well as joining Adran, Thea, and Baron in the Land of the Hunter. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.